So actually for this video title, this will not be a normal finance related video, but will instead be like a life story kind of video. So in this video, I'll share about my time in the police force, where I spent close to 11 years, and so I chose to resign somewhere in mid-2023. So let's just make it clear, I'm not making this video to actually pinpoint fault on the police force or the civil service in general. I just want to give my perspective from an ex-civil servant and also offer some thoughts for those who are going through the same place as me and also those who are thinking about quitting their first-time jobs after a long time. So officially I entered SPF on September 11, 2012 as a then young 20-year-old who had just graduated from Polytechnic. So after 7 months of training in Home Team Academy, I was actually posted to the Marina Bay Neighbourhood Police Centre as an NPC officer, or now commonly known as a Ground Response Force officer. So if you're curious, an NPC or driver officer is basically the uniform officers you see patrolling your neighbourhoods and responding or attending to 999 calls. So as a driver officer, working hours is basically 12-hour shifts for day and night. So for a typical shift system, think of it as a 4-day cycle. So the first day is your 12-hour day shift, second day 12-hour night shift, your third day is an off day of the night shift, and then the fourth day is an off day. But this fourth day can also be used for training purposes. You can also be deployed for ad hoc security events or major events like National Day, F1 Grand Prix, or year-end countdown. So at times, this fourth day could also be an official working day in that sense. And so do note that for your 12-hour shifts, typically will stretch to at least 14 hours as you report early and prepare for the shift, and so report off a bit later after wrapping up paperwork and other admin stuff at the end of the shift. So typically a good shift will 14 hours if we include both a pre-shift and post-shift admin stuff. But sometimes a shift can also drag on to way later if you have a last minute call or last minute incident to attend to. So in that sense, the working hours could vary a lot, but still fall within this 4-day shift cycle. So while some people might find this shift system to be a bit demanding, I felt it was quite alright as I was still quite young at that time, and also I felt a sense of purpose and fulfillment in my job. Perhaps this was due to the impact that I felt I could deliver in my interaction with the public, and so the amount of personal growth I experienced as a young drive officer who just entered the police force. So I was a drive officer for about 3 years until 2016, and I would say despite feeling a sense of purpose and fulfillment and also growing as an individual, things got a bit monotonous and mundane on my 3rd year. So that was when I decided to look at other departments of the police force and also see where I could be posted to after my drive stint. So at this time, I got an opportunity to actually take up a full-time degree sponsorship. So as some of you might know, I actually took up a full-time sponsorship for my diploma studies right after my O-levels. So this opportunity for full-time degree sponsorship seems to be a no-brainer to me. It's like a fast track my career progression at SPF. I still got a free degree in that sense to boot. So of course, the downside to this is that there is a 4-year bond to this degree studies program. So long story short, I actually applied for this degree sponsorship program and so successfully got it. So thereafter, in 2016, if I don't recall wrongly, about August 2016, I actually had a mini career break to pursue my degree for about 3 years. And let me tell you, those 3 years, I think it's one of the best times of my working life. Because number one, I was still being fully paid my salary, including mid-year, year-end, and 13-month bonus. Number two, you're basically a working adult with adult money, but living a life of a regular uni kid. And while I had to work during my semester break, I felt there was just a small, slight inconvenience of a luxury of being a paid student. And part of those three of luxury in that sense was what prompted a mindset shift in the way I look at life. I started to think more about what I really want in life, and so the things that provide the most amount of fulfillment and purpose to my life. If you ask me what triggers mindset shift, I don't really have an answer for it, but I think a lot of it is down to maturing and finding out what really matters to you in life. So by the time I graduated in May 2019, the desire to continue being SPF or even becoming a senior officer has kind of dwindled down a bit. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't mind becoming one, but I'm also equally fine with not being one. So perhaps there was no surprise that my interview for the senior officer track was not successful. So the interview not being successful, I returned to becoming a drive officer in Marina Bay NPC for the next 1 year plus till about 2021. If I don't recall wrongly, in March 2021, I was posted to the Community Policing Unit in Marina Bay NPC. As a CP officer, your working hours is basically 9 to 6, Monday to Friday, and you get the weekends off. So besides the working hours, the nature of job is also quite different. Because as a drive officer, you are more frontline in that sense of attending to cases, attending to individuals, and whatnot. However, as a CP officer, your job is more corporate-like in a sense of sending out emails, planning engagement activities or events, all in the purpose of reducing or preventing crime. So despite these office-like working hours, as a civil officer, you are still deployed for major events or other ad hoc security events. At times, you also have to cover shifts for a drug officer when there's a manpower issue. So in that sense, it's not really an office hour type of position. So the civil officer post was the last post that I held before resigning in 2023. So now that you know my career background in SPF, I'll now dive straight into the reasons of why I left SPF. I think the most crucial aspect of it was that I lost a sense of purpose in what I was doing. Now don't get me wrong, a career at SPF is still inherently meaningful as your job can directly impact individuals and also help keep crime off the streets. Furthermore, the demonstrations you have in the public and things that you see in Singapore for better or worse can also really impact you as an individual and also change the way you perceive things in life. However, during my time as a CP officer, I felt the work I did was increasingly more and more like a facade. So there were often times that I felt the work I did was not just to appease the higher ups or to show them that you're doing something, when in actual fact, the things that we did may not be having any meaningful impact on crime or even solving issues on the ground. Now, again, this sort of play acting is very common in corporate jobs, and the police force will be no different. But when you concentrate about 70% of the work that you do, it really sucks out any meaning that you may have in your job. So besides finding no meaning in the job that I did, I also increasingly dislike the corporate culture of the police force. So due to the hierarchy in the police force, I felt that everyone just really please their higher ups. This creates a whole culture of yes men who just assist to anything or any request that is put forth by higher ups, regardless of whether these things actually have any meaningful impact or practical impact on the ground. Because of this, I felt the work I did was not to have any meaningful impact, but rather because it was said or dictated so by the higher ups. Now moving on to the next reason of why I left, I didn't see a viable future for me in the police force. Now I don't know whether this stemmed from the fact that I lost meaning in my work, but I increasingly felt that I wasn't really keen on the career progression at SPF. As most of you will know, the SPF ranks are split into senior officer ranks and regular police officer ranks. So while one can transit from regular officer to become a senior officer without a degree, it will take them maybe 15 to 20 years in the force. So for those regular officers who have a degree, they can more easily transit into the senior officer ranks, but it's just going through application and interview process. So successful in the process, your next 6 years or so is more or less set. You go through a training of 6 months before becoming an investigating officer for 3 years or so, and then a team leader for another 3 years or so. So with that said, I personally felt that I wasn't really keen on becoming an investigating officer because I feel that that's the epitome of being underpaid and overworked. And so to add on, managing a team of officers wasn't really my cup of tea either. So from this perspective, I didn't feel the career progression of the police force was attractive or appealing to me. I mean, sure, the higher pay is definitely appealing, but is it really worth it or not doing something that really find meaning or purpose in? Food for thought. So if me not finding much purpose in becoming a senior officer, the next option for career progression in the police force is to find horizontal postings in different departments in the police force. However, after my time as CP officer working in higher management, I didn't feel that corporate culture will shift differently even if I moved to different departments in the police force. So after considering the whole career picture of the SPF, I felt that there wasn't a path that would provide me the most growth and fulfillment as an individual. So after knowing that the next part of my career would likely not be in the police force, I had to consider whether I was financially resilient enough to actually leave the police force and consider the what-if scenarios. So as some of you might know, I actually reached a net worth of 500k at the age of 31. So this amount I felt that I could take some risks as my retirement was more or less secured. Even the worst case scenario, I could still easily find a job that pays me 3 to 4k a month, which will also not jeopardize much in terms of long-term retirement plans. So in terms of savings, I was able to cover more than 1 year of expenses. So I was looking at this 1 year period as a time for me to actually find suitable and sustainable income options, and even if I fail, I'll just simply look for a full-time job. So from this perspective, I felt there wasn't much risk involved, even if I would leave the police force and not have an income for the next 1 year. So after thinking it through and looking at both the pros and cons, mainly due to the salary that I earn, I decided to take a leap of faith. I decided to leave the police force in June 2023 after accumulating enough savings to fall back on for the next 1 year or so. So yeah, now you know the reasons for me leaving the police force. Now before ending this video, I want to say that career in the police force is still inherently meaningful. It's good to see things and experience things that not many Singaporeans will be able to do so. And because of that, it really grows you as an individual and impact your way of thinking in life. So if you have passion and interest of joining the police force, I would say by all means go for it. It will still be one of the most impactful jobs you ever have in your life. So if you ask me whether I would regret my 11 years at the police force, I will tell you the answer is a straight no. Because I think it really impacted me and really shaped me into becoming who I am today, and also the perspective that I have in my life right now. It's just that after 11 years at the force, I felt it was time to actually set a new direction in where I want to go in life and career-wise.